Welcome back. People are asking, how is failure a resource? Those of you who've been following me, who've heard me train in different places around the world, you know that I talk about how failure is awesome. Failure is something that absolutely leads us to success. It leads us to what is going to work. And so many of you have heard me talk about how if you had a road sign, you got to the road sign and you're trying to decide what direction you want to go. Most people think that one way the road sign would point to success over here, and over here it would point to failure, as if they are two opposite directions. That's not true. Failure and success would actually be pointing in the same direction. And the reason this is so powerful to understand is because once your perspective changes, then you see failure in a different light. So people ask, how is failure a resource? How is it good? How can it possibly be good? Because when bad things happen, when things don't work the way we want, when the plan that we had goes a direction we didn't expect, and we don't see what we expected or what we would call success, then all of a sudden we feel like I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not worth it. This must be the wrong niche for me. Maybe this was the wrong relationship. That's not necessarily what it means. You have to learn to identify what failure really means. Because as long as we keep telling ourselves the story that failure is bad, it will always seem bad, and we won't see how our life is changing, how we could change because of what we're learning. Because there are 4 things that we learn from failure. This is how failure is a resource. The things that we learn. The very first one is we learn what isn't working. Do you get how powerful that is? That is huge, because once you know what isn't working, now that's off the table. You're not going to keep trying to do that thing because it's not working. I don't care if we're talking relationships. I don't care if we're talking business. I don't care if we're talking mindset. If we are going a certain direction, let's use a relationship as an example. You have a relationship and you are trying to connect with this person. You are trying to get closer, but it seems like you keep bumping your head against a wall. Every time you talk about this particular issue, it seems to end in an argument or there's a frustration. It doesn't even feel like it's working. Well, it's because that particular thing doesn't work. There might be 1,000 things to try, but you've tried that one, and now you know that doesn't work. You can either decide to keep beating your head against the wall and doing the same thing, or use that failure as a resource and go, oh, that's one of the 1,000 ways it doesn't work. You have all heard Thomas Edison, how he said, creating the light bulb wasn't 999 failures, and then he finally figured it out. He said, discovering and creating the light bulb was a process that took 1,000 steps. So the failure that you're experiencing now that you call failure is actually one of the steps toward creating the success that you're looking for. And if you will learn that, oh, if I'm having failure, this is what's not working, now you eliminate that option and you only have 999 to go. And the quicker you get to that place where you decide, oh, that's just teaching me what isn't working, then you get right on to the next one and you get through the 999 other ones really fast and get to success so much faster. But when you focus on the failure and you're worried about why you're failing and think about how you're not doing it right, then what happens is it gets really hard and it takes a long time to get to that place where you finally will acknowledge, oh, that wasn't working. That's all it was. It was just what wasn't working. So now I know to move on to the next thing. And when you try the next thing and that one doesn't work, guess what? Now you know the next thing that isn't working. Okay, the second way that failure is a resource is that you learn to control your emotions. Failure is hard. When you get to that piece of the puzzle that didn't fit, or the thing you tried and it didn't work, or you feel like you're giving your whole heart and somehow you didn't see the success you were looking for, what happens is it can be depressing. It gets frustrating. You can be angry. You can be angry at the other people who didn't do what they committed they were going to do. Let's say you're working through something in your business. You're trying to work with your clients. For example, this happened with me. We were working with some online marketers. We paid them a lot of money. a lot of money every month to market our product. And at first, things were going great. It was the honeymoon phase. They were doing all the things they said they were going to do. But as time went by, now we're used to using them. We've got everything in place. Our employees know how to interact and work with them. And so we let it keep going, and we stopped checking on it so often. We stopped making sure that it was working. And when we did look at it again, we realized, oh my goodness, that this has totally gone down. We should have been checking this better. This isn't working. We've been spending a lot of money every month, and we're not seeing the results that we were seeing at the beginning. And guess what? That was a failure. That was a failure, and it was frustrating. And I will tell you, guess what? I wanted to blame somebody else. I wanted to blame them for not doing what they were supposed to be doing, what they had committed that they would do. I wanted to be upset with my employees because my employees could have been checking better and more often. There are so many things that where the emotions went crazy. I was angry at losing so much money. I felt depressed that I hadn't been a better leader. There are all these emotions that come. But guess what? You get to learn to control those emotions. And as you practice learning to do that, the amazing thing is you start to become the person that can handle the success when it actually does come. If you had the success that you're dreaming of right now, you are not the person who can handle that success. You know how I know that? Because you aren't that successful yet. You haven't hit that level of success. You've had levels of success, and you are the person, you have the character that can handle that level of success. But if you are not successful to that point yet, it's because you haven't figured out all the ones that don't work and gotten to the place where you found out what does work, which is exactly what created the character that made you become the person who can handle that kind of success. It's kind of crazy, and we kind of don't want to admit it. We don't want to face it. But learning to control your emotions is a really big one, because it helps us curb blame. It helps us curb our anger. It helps us curb the pride that we feel, and it changes us. It really changes us. So keep in mind, failure is helping you become what you need to become. The third thing that we learn from failure is we learn to take accountability. When we don't get to be blaming other people, when we don't get to blame our employees, when we don't get to blame our relationship on something that someone else did, all of a sudden, the buck stops here. And when the buck stops here, guess what happens? Then you stop and think, oh my goodness, if this is my fault, if this stops with me, if this is my responsibility, and I have to take accountability for this, and I can't put it on anybody else, I can't act like it's somebody else's fault, or if someone else had done something differently, then this wouldn't have happened. Guess what it does? It forces me to stop and go, okay, if this was caused because of me and I have to take accountability, then what can I do differently the next time so that this doesn't happen? Because as long as I'm blaming someone else, as long as I'm looking for somewhere else to think about where that's where the problem stemmed from, my mind is not working on, okay, how can I solve this? And how can I make sure this doesn't happen next time? You know, what's interesting is as I've had to work on that over the years in my business to create the kind of success that we created in my business, what happened was, see, even now I can't even say that I created in my business because I've changed. When you're creating your business and you're working super hard and you're building something amazing, you feel like I did this, I'm doing this. But the more you grow and the more you learn, the more you can't even say that, because there are too many people who were involved. There were too many people who helped. There's no way that you could have done it by yourself. And so I want you to remember to learn to take accountability. When you take accountability, what happens is, you start to notice your emotion and you try to control your emotion. But learning to take accountability is taking it even a step further. What happens is you start to recognize, oh, okay, so I am getting angry at them because I don't like what they did. But the reality is, I could have been checking those reports. I could have been making sure that I was getting those reports from my employees. I could have made sure that I had a process in place to keep track of exactly what was happening with that piece of my business. Those are things I could have done. And in order to change things, guess what? Now that's what I need to do. I need to take those action items, create an action plan of how that process will be so that this doesn't happen the next time. And guess what I've just done? I've just created a situation in my business where now it's running more smoothly. I have a more clear process, and we are now a little bit closer to moving toward success. And I'll tell you right now, we're definitely moving toward the right direction. We're a lot closer to the right direction. The fourth thing that you learn when you are dealing with failure, when things don't go the way that you want, is you learn to detect failure quicker. This is exciting because I'll be working in my business and I'll notice something right away. And I can identify it, I can realize what it is and go, oh, we need to change course right now. I don't need to wait to see all the fallout in order to know that I need to make a change. So what happens is I'm able to succeed quicker. Let's say that, the light bulb starts with 1,000 steps. It might take weeks or months or even a year for him to do testing to figure out that this one way doesn't work because you have all these factors involved and they're all coming to converge in the same place. So it takes a long time for that first failure and for you to figure out that that's a failure. Now when that one's gone, you only have 999. And the next ones might seem like they're taking a long time, but you get to failure number 75, or not 70, like 25, and you go, oh, I can identify these different issues. And there are fewer factors involved because I've eliminated so many of the other problems, the other things that are leading me to failure. So it's huge. Those four: learn what isn't working, learn to control your emotions, you learn to take accountability, and you learn to detect failure quicker. This is a powerful reason to start to appreciate. You don't have to love it. You don't have to love failure. You don't have to like what it feels like. We don't like what it feels like. But those are 4 reasons to help you start to appreciate, wow, this is a process that is really important. And I'm learning through this process, through these failures or steps to success, whatever you want to call them. But that is why it's so important. So I want you to start paying attention in your business, in your relationships, in your mindset. I want you to start to recognize where, number one, where there's failure, start to pay attention to what you're learning from it and start learning to recognize it faster so that you can succeed faster, because that's what I want for you. Failure is actually a really powerful tool, and it is something you can put in your toolkit and use it to create success. And as you think through these things and as you work through this process in your mind and you fight with yourself about the stories you're telling yourself and what you're thinking, I want you to remember one thing. Don't just think different, be different.